Welcome to the Gourds and Pomegranates podcast, talking common sense for church communications. Here's Hannah and Joe.
Well, I guess we should get going. We've hit the record button. The big hooray. Welcome to... I'm not going to say the big hooray. That sounds stupid.
No, I like it.
We'll go with the big hooray then. Welcome to Gourds and Pomegranates, a brand new podcast. Yeah, we got some hype going on there, at least on Hannah's side. I
feel like we should have had like poppers or something. Yeah,
party poppers would have been good. One of those massive ones that people like shoot the wrong way into their chest or something. Yeah, so this is Gourds and Pomegranates. More about the name later. We hope that you like the randomness of it. We certainly do. Essentially, we are two Christian creatives who are looking to have a grounded way of telling people about church commons. That could be helpful for churches, obviously, but it could be helpful for people beyond that. Charities, ministries, even businesses can benefit from it, but it's going to have a Christian focus to it, and that's our niche. I'll introduce Hannah.
Oh, it's like, actually, I shouldn't really wave if it's a podcast, should I?
That doesn't really tend to work so much in the podcasting format. Yeah,
Listener,
she's holding up a sign which says sorry.
Yes.
So Hannah, we'll tell you a little bit more about what we do later, but Hannah is a digital missioner, and myself, I'm a Christian creative. I work with websites, I work with branding and a little bit of other stuff, but I guess we should probably start off by asking what actually is church comms, and I'm going to give that question over to Hannah.
Oh, see, that's a question. So my life is very much involved, but actually I had to really think about answering that. So I would summarise church comms in the communications, the branding and marketing that a church would do, both internally within staff, church family themselves. So that could be either emails, newsletters, Facebook groups or WhatsApp groups and stuff. And so it's sort of the internal, very more personal communications, but also then the external communication. So that's with the public, with partner organisations, partner churches or national organisations, such as if you're thinking kind of an Anglican church and how they communicate outwardly to the diocese. So it does encompass a lot of different things: websites, social media, CRM, video technology or tech stuff like that. Not that I know all the ins and outs of it, but I think between the two of us we cover a fair amount.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. You know, we've been involved in church comms stuff in various guises for quite a while. That's how we met, through a church comms event run by Premier Digital. But I think, you know, we're not going to be an expert on everything, but we hope to bring a good perspective to it. And obviously down the line, we can get some people on to talk about it and their sort of expertise, their areas of work. And I think that's something, you know, that I'm very conscious with the podcast, is that we want to come in at the ground level. We want this to be accessible to someone who doesn't have a clue how to set up a Facebook page, who doesn't really understand what TikTok is, or why they should be using it. Not necessarily someone who has got all of these social accounts and is quite good at what they do, but just wants to take it to the next level. I think that's at least in my mind, that we're more of like a 0 to 20 rather than like an 80 to 100 kind of deal. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, definitely. And I think following, I don't want to say we're out of the pandemic, but following the last 2 years of the pandemic, it has shown that not that we all have to be on that kind of higher end. I know all the ins and outs of everything, but just having a basic understanding does help to communicate the church's message a bit better. But also, if God forbid anything should happen like that again, at least we're all a bit more prepared for being remotely connected.
Yeah, and I think, you know, we saw that through the early stages of lockdowns, where people were scrambling to sign up for a Zoom account and press stream and figure out what that meant. That's a world apart from your sort of church that's got a massive production hub and is putting out streams with multiple cameras, you know, multiple audio feeds and subtitles and all of these things. And so we want to sort of help people from that ground level. Partly, I think, because we know of some great resources that are already out there. for people who do want to step things up. And that's something that we're keen not to tread on people's toes. We're keen not to say we're the final be all and end all for church comms, but hopefully a good introduction for people, a good sort of first step.
Yeah. I have had someone once call me a guru, and that was the worst thing, because I don't want to be a guru, because I don't know everything. Social media is changing so frequently that I'm always learning things. So yeah, definitely very much not the final authority.
And so if I can put you on the spot and say just some examples of things that we'll cover, if we're taking, an episode of the podcast, what might a typical episode look like when it's not the pilot, when we're not rambling on about who we are and what we're planning to do?
So I suppose things that we might look at would be kind of tools and resources that we found helpful and useful. It's always lovely sharing things. So I love Canva, and I share it sort of, advocate that people should use it. And it's so lovely to hear sort of a couple of weeks or months later and someone saying, oh, I use it and it's really helpful. So we really want to share the tools that we use, but also kind of reflect upon things that are currently done. So a big point of reflection, I suppose the word would be, are sort of church posters and flyers and things. And it's something that we kind of reflect upon. How could we make that better if we were doing it, but equally at the same time we realise.
I'm going to put this in I'll put this in a tactful way for you. Some church design is terrible. And we want to put that across in the most loving way, but ultimately say there is a better way. Say, what could people be doing better, but they might not even realise that they're not necessarily doing the best job of it.
Yes, and again, I think that's as well part of what we want to do is not criticise people, but just open their eyes to actually the potential of stuff in various forms of online. So yeah, we'll reflect upon posters from websites and ways to improve, or sort of just those behind the scenes parts of the website that you don't quite understand. Understanding social media platforms. So again, what's best for your audience, for your community, and how to make the most of that. We will also hopefully be interviewing various people or within sort of the digital comms sphere. So that might be kind of Christian influencers, people in leadership, people who kind of do similar work to us, but in different ways or in different areas. So we'll sort of be chatting with them. And we've got a long list of stuff, but I suppose it's sort of reflecting upon a number of different aspects. And yeah, I think as we hopefully this gets spread out, we will have more questions and stuff. And so we do want to be kind of reactionary to the questions that we receive. So if someone says, I'm really lost in this way, how can I resolve this problem? Hopefully we will be able to answer that.
Yeah. And with that in mind, if you do have any specific questions that you want us to answer, we've got a website, we've got gppodcast.uk, and you can email us on hello@gppodcast.uk. And yeah, we'd love to hear from you, because it's an element of how long is a piece of string in terms of all the different things that we could cover. They probably fit into a handful of categories, but how deep do you go with them? We could spend a episode talking about social media, or we could spend an episode talking about Facebook, or we can spend an episode talking about groups on Facebook and how they're different from pages, or we could talk about even more niche than that. So we're not going to run out of content in that sense, but we want to hear from listeners as to what's the areas that they want us to focus in on. And a big thing for me with that is why as well, asking the why question.
Yeah.
There are loads of social networks out there, for example. Why do you need to be on this one? Do you need to bother at all? And I suppose alongside that, the how, not in terms of practically how do you actually do that, but also in terms of, do you have the resources? Who's going to do it? Do they have the time?
Yeah.
These, I think, are the questions that churches are asking.
Yeah, definitely. And I think slightly going back of why is it important? Of so many think that just because they don't have someone designated to do it, that they shouldn't do anything. And so hopefully we can help them to understand actually even just by doing a little bit of something is better than nothing. And as well, as well as sort of looking at the technical stuff, we do want to be able to reflect on kind of current issues and things. So not looking at the ethical and moral concerns that come from the meta world, but thinking about like, how does these updates affect this app or this platform, and how can we, how does that impact your comm strategy or the type of content that you might want to be creating? So kind of looking from that side of the trends and current issues, or I suppose, again, God forbid, something like the pandemic, but actually how something like that would impact the use of digital.
So I guess, this podcast has been a long while coming. It's something that we're both passionate about, but we're also busy people, and we've wanted to sort of make sure that if we're going to do this, that we're going to do it to the best of our abilities. So I'm going to ask Hannah to tell us a bit more about herself and what it is that makes her so busy.
Goodness. Well, yeah, we had to wait to start this until I did my hair again, because that had to happen. But yeah, so as Joe already said, I am a digital missioner. It's a bit of a kind of unclear job title, but I feel it encompasses the various aspects of the different things that I do. So I'm predominantly a comms consultant and practitioner, I suppose the word would be, for, again, predominantly the Baptist world within the UK. So I work at the moment with Southwest Baptist Association as their digital missioner, and reflecting both on the strategic and practical aspects of digital and tech within the association, and how that kind of filters down in the ecclesiology of the association to the churches, but also help with general comms day to day. I am comms lead for East Midlands Baptist Association, so dealing with their Facebook and email communications and things, and then occasionally we'll do some videos and stuff like that. And then I am also digital lead for a very exciting digital videography creative project with the Baptist Union. It's a very complicated project, and every time we explain it grows bigger and bigger because we get more and more ideas, where we are doing a sort of 6-part documentary on social justice issues from the Baptist perspective. And alongside that, I will be filming that documentary being made and asking them all sorts of questions as to why and how they're filming it in that way, so that I can relay that to an audience who are learning how to create videos for their church or charity or organisation, and particularly for those who aren't formally trained. So it's sort of like, how do we learn this as just not a general skill, but how do we learn this without having to need to have kind of multi-year education? So kind of from a CMD, even not CRM, CMD, continued ministerial development. We're also creating a stock library of kind of images and videos to be used in content creation. And yeah, reflecting kind of theologically across the Baptist Association to how we use digital. Just kind of work-wise, I am also studying a Master's in Digital Theology at Spurgeon's College. And yeah, that kind of takes up most of my time, to be honest.
There's a lot there. Me. There's a lot there.
Yeah.
But it's also that thing of, not that you're exclusive freelancer, but that different weeks will look different, right? And I can resonate. Definitely. I can resonate with that as well. So I run Be Gallant. That's a web and branding company. It's not exclusively for Christian clients, but quite a lot of them are. So probably about half of the projects I work on are with churches, and then the others are sort of charities, small businesses, sometimes some sort of Christian charities and Christian missions as well, which is quite interesting because I like the variety. The variety between different projects, between different clients. So that's good. I've been doing it as my full-time business for 4 or so years now. Before that, I was doing it on the side of a job for a startup where I was sort of overseeing their digital, their marketing. And for quite a while, I also ran a blog called Church Train with the same sort of idea. That's really the passion behind this podcast, to help people with the basics of church comms. But interestingly, you know, my background was actually video. That was what I trained in. And so, you know, with what Hannah's saying about documentaries and behind the scenes, I love that kind of stuff. I'll still watch that now, even if it's not so much what I do professionally anymore. Yeah, I just came to websites and to graphic design and branding really out of that same passion. I was working for a church and seeing that other churches were just spending their money, but not necessarily in the right places. And so, yeah, I could get on a soapbox and talk about websites and branding all day long, but there's probably plenty of time to do that in another episode. So yeah, that's me really. I'm based down in Kent. Spent a lot of time in Bournemouth, which is not too far from where you are, Hannah.
No.
Yeah.
I suppose we're both on the south coast, sunny south coast.
That's it. Yeah, I'm less close to a beach than I used to be, which is disappointing, but it's not too far. So I suppose we should address the elephant in the room, really, shouldn't we? Why on earth have we called our podcast Gourds and Pomegranates?
Because we're fruity salads. I don't know. That's the wrong thing, isn't it? That's not what the notes said.
Stick to the script. I mean, I think there is an element of it's a really random, quirky name that we both quite liked when we came up with it. Especially having talked about the podcast for so long, and then it's like, we probably actually need to think of a name for this thing if we're actually ever going to do it. So why not Gourds and Pomegranates, right?
Why not? That was the first thing we came up with.
It's literally the first thing. But yeah, I mean, I guess on a more serious note, no, it was taken from a passage in 1 Kings where there's this description of Solomon's temple and all of the things that are going into it. So there's all of this cedar wood, there's bronze. It's a really beautiful structure that's being built there. And even these little details. So in 1 Kings 7, it talks about these interwoven chains around these bigger structures. And you've got tiny gourds that are carved into the cedar wood. You've got gourds and pomegranates being carved and sort of interlinked in there. So as I say, I think we like the quirkiness of that. Like even my sort of, as it were, most skilled in memory friends who are Christians still kind of hear it when I mention it to them and go, okay, am I missing something there? Is there a reference I should be getting? And I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I quite like that it's kind of obscure and you're not going to get it straight away. We're not expecting people to get it, but that's okay.
Yeah, and I think the amount of like church comms podcasts that were already out there, we did want to do something that would stand out from the crowd slightly.
So there's a lesson on branding for you as well.
Yeah.
Do something which has nothing to do with the subjects that you're talking about, but no, there is something to do with it. We like the idea, especially with pomegranates, but there's this idea of abundance and plenty, and using sort of craft and skill to proclaim these things, these blessings that we have from God, and to tell people about them. And this element of sort of artistry as well.
And I find, I don't know whether you have the same, I'm sure we've probably both reflected on it at one point. I find as being in a kind of more creative job where, it's often dismissed as like less important, both kind of within the church and like within life. Like people just don't quite get creative jobs as opposed to like, I'm a teacher or I'm a nurse or a mechanic or something like that. And they
don't have quite the same gravitas.
No, and doing church comms, it seems to be a complete baffle for like a lot of my family who are all Christians, but they just don't quite understand it. So often I feel really frustrated that like, am I like less serving God because I'm not a Sunday school leader or something like that? And actually, there are these references in the Bibles where it is in quite explicit detail, like the interwoven chains and these sort of, you know, cedar carvings, that actually God really values those who do creative things and use it as a means of worshipping him. And there's, I find real encouragement in those moments within the Bible where it's not just about the, you know, Moses who led them out, you know, awesome for him, but equally, I can't remember it now, but Bezalel, who but God specifically says, go to Bezalel, for he will do these sort of these moments of artistry. And so yeah, it's kind of like understanding that everything we do is a means of worship and to glorify God and to, you know, grow the kingdom. You know, he gives us these gifts and he's creative, God's creative, so why can't we use that? So yeah, again, why not use something as random as gourds and pomegranates? I think we should get t-shirts. I think we could start whole merchandise.
We'll get there. I think we just need to downplay, you know, the other story in the Old Testament where the prophets are about to get poisoned by some gourds that someone's gone out, one of the prophets has gone out to collect to try and make some food, and that's all a bit awkward. So we'll talk less about that bit and more about the gourds and pomegranates in the temple.
In the good way.
It's amazing, actually, when you start thinking about gourds and pomegranates, it's amazing how often they start coming up in what you're reading. Yeah. Well, there is also, and I haven't yet quite to work out how exactly it will work in the comms, like in our church comms kind of train of thought, but there is also the reference to Jonah and having a gourd to shadow him and protect him. So I don't know, somehow church. So what you're saying is there's another reference, but we've just not got the tangential link to get to it. Yes, yeah. We'll work on that. We'll work on that. Yeah. It'll be on season 2. We'll have like, here's a new meaning. We'll be like searching all the different Bible translations to see like where are the extra hidden gourds in the Bible. I'll learn Hebrew just to be able to like go and do the original references and Greek and all of that. There you go. So if that's not an enticement to get you coming back for more in episode 2 and onwards, I don't know what is. But as we said, we want to hear from you. If there are specific topics that you're going to want us to cover, any questions that you have, then just let us know. hello@gppodcast.uk. And yeah, subscribe, and we'll be back with you soon for the next one.